Russia did not just attack Ukraine in 2022, and not only militarily. The war started in 2014, and both propaganda and information warfare have been at the forefront of Russia's efforts to control, dominate, and coerce the people of Ukraine. But a whole community of digital innovators, marketers, and software engineers have fought back. They've been creating new ways to tackle disinformation, promote truth, and tackle weaponized social media. Along with the other digital innovators, they are creating a new front line in the fight for democracy, and in many ways are far ahead of the West in advancing techniques for digital counterinsurgency and info ops. Welcome to Silicon Curtain. We aim to cover a range of issues around online propaganda and digital disinformation. If you enjoy the material we create, then please like and subscribe to help boost the popularity of our videos in YouTube, and share our channel with your network. Anastasiya Baydachenko is a digital media specialist with over 17 years of work experience I'll start that again. Anastasiya Baydachenko is a digital media specialist with over 17 years of experience within leading network and local advertising agencies. She is Chief Executive Officer of IAB Ukraine, the Interactive Advertising Bureau, an advertising business organization that develops industry standards, conducts research, and provides legal support for the online advertising industry. She is also Chief Operating Officer of Razom Communications, a digital media agency in the Kiev region. She has previously been Chief Transformation Officer at IPG and Havas Group, a leading Western media company. Anastasiya, welcome.
Hi, Jonathan. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very pleased to speak on behalf of IAB Ukraine and my country in such difficult times.
Thank you. Well, let's start with a really obvious question. What's it been like working in war conditions under the threat of bombardment since February 22?
Uneasy. Definitely it is very uneasy because COVID taught us a lot. We are ready to work distantly, we are ready for remote work, but now our teams, both IAB teams and our IAB Ukraine member teams, are dispersed throughout the Ukraine, Europe, and even world. So we have a very difficult and different situation when we have a standard working call, because someone are in Poland, Germany, and it's okay, but some people are in different regions of Ukraine. For example, Western, it may be okay, but Eastern or now it's Southern regions, it could be problems. Ukraine is a large country, and sometimes we have rocket attacks throughout all the territory, sometimes for some regions. And for example, when we have our normal weekly status, it is possible that someone will be under air raid sirens and should go to the shelter. Definitely the war has a very difficult impact on people's mental health. And it's normal that people need support, psychological support and leadership support. And of course, they lost a good share of their productivity. And that is why I could say that our job now is quite uneasy, because we are doing it under difficult circumstances.
Of course.
What state it is difficult.
Of course, I think, yes, everybody who's seen the footage daily on the news realizes just how tough it is and how risky in many parts of the country. You are a very visible member of the marketing community in Eastern Europe. Have you had a lot of support and encouragement from colleagues and acquaintances?
Oh, I hope so. IAB family definitely support IAB Ukraine so much. I mean, here not only kind and supportive words, but also a very important action. For instance, it was Russian and Belarusian IAB license removal. It was Ukraine participation in many programs, and it was also financial support, because we have now great economic tragedy. We lost a lot of great share of GDP, and all our members are part of Ukrainian economy, and it is very difficult for them to pay membership fee, for example. And my budget as NGO consists of membership fee. And our colleagues from IAB Europe, from IAB US, they are very helpful, not only in words, but in certain action. And also I, as IAB Ukraine leader, receive a lot of proposals to speak on behalf of my country. It is very important because I could deliver a message of true witness, because from February 24th, I was in Kiev, and I left Kiev for the first time in May to visit a conference in Madrid, and also to speak about impact of war to the NGO role, and impact of the war to the Ukrainian digital economy. So my voice is a true voice of witness, of a woman, of a mother, of a digital professional who is not, I couldn't say in just in epicenter, but in the center of war, in the territory of war. That is why I use and grateful for every opportunity to speak, because it's not like a newspaper, it's real voice of real person who is real witness of the things.
Absolutely. And of course, every family will know of somebody who's either fighting or who, you know, has had bad news and isn't going to return. So it's absolutely tragic. And we have many refugees where I live, and I'm getting to know many of them. So yeah, these are all real people, aren't they? Each real individuals. And that leads me to my next question. So there have always been very close relationships with neighboring countries. And of course, prior to the war, you must have had some relationships, at least, with professionals, Russian professionals in the marketing community. Have you received any messages of support from them at all, or have they been completely silent?
Yes, I had a lot of connection both with Russia and Belarus, because I was working in Denso and IPG, and this is network holding, and we have a lot of personal and business connections. But unfortunately, unfortunately, I have not received any supportive messages from Russia or Belarus. And for me, it's deep sorrow, and because all my connections, they are educated and intelligent people. And even I could understand that they are afraid, they could not raise their voice. But I could not understand why they could not connect me personally in any kind of close messenger, for example, and tell me something supportive, because I got a lot of supportive messages, letters from the work from all IB, from all continents, from Australia, from Americas. People just write me a few words in order to support me, or even to propose a shelter, or to go to their country, and they propose their help for me and my family. And I actually had no desire to leave my country, but it was so warm, it was so from heart, that it was a few rows of kind words were very supportive and helped to keep my self-esteem and my desire to do my job. Here in Kiev, even we have air raids in March, for example, 6 or 7 times per day. So, but none of my Russians and Belarusian connection did the same thing.
That is obviously extremely disappointing. And I also have, you know, a lot of connections in Russia, and even when they make statements, anti-war statements, there's still strong whataboutism. Yes, but what about NATO? What about? So you can feel that the propaganda is really got deep into people's brains. They can't see, the English phrase is the wood for the trees. Now, you have used your very formidable skills as a marketer to tackle Russian propaganda. When did you launch your campaign, and what motivated you to start it?
Yeah, I remember this fact very clearly because it was second or third day after the war outbreaks, and I was still in Kiev, and I was in my apartment. I have a kind of shelter with no windows, no glasses, kind of internal room, and I sit there with three my kids, and I thought, should I leave or should I still live in Kiev or go abroad, or go to Poland or Hungary? And one of our IAB Ukraine members, someone from EdTech category, just called me and proposed to start an advertising campaign targeting to Russian and Belarusian audiences and trying to deliver true messages of war. Because Russia still in public call the war a special operation. They do not call it a war, but we already have losses, and Russians at the first day of war had 1,000 dead soldiers per day. So there were great losses, and these losses were completely closed. They announced publicly for the Russian people that their losses it's up to 200 people. So very, very big difference, very big delta. So I call or write to our members, agencies, EdTech, some other companies, and I found out that a lot of them are ready to unite, to be united in team and use their own resources, or we also use fundraising to launch this campaign. So we targeted this advertising, both standard and non-standard. So we use all our expertise as digital experts and do almost the same thing our teams usually do for their advertisers, for their clients. We run advertising campaigns, but the messages were a kind of informational resistance. We try to speak about real losses, both people and military technique. So all these figures and information which was completely closed for the Russian people. We also deliver messages about economical sanctions and consequences of economical sanctions, such as exchange rate between dollars and ruble, some possible shortages with food like whole wheat, like sugar, like salt, like oil. And also we make special appeal to the mothers of Russian soldiers. There is a kind of NGO, Soldiers Mothers Committee in Russia, which is relatively powerful, and they could go to protest and try to keep their sons in Russia. And also we targeted with similar messages to Belarusia. And I think that heaviness of our campaigns in last days of February and March are caused that Belarusians are they're still not in open war. So Belarusian soldiers are in Belarus under the Belarusian borders. They are not here in Ukraine because the Belarusian army is not very strong. Our army, for example, had 8 years of experience in Donbas region, and actually it's very good active experience for soldiers and for military men. That is why, for example, Belarusian soldiers, they're actually afraid of Ukrainian because we have very different experience, military experience. But what was the problem with our campaigns? From day to day, we have less and less available tools to communicate to Russians. Why? Because such companies like Google, Facebook, every time, every day, they close some possibilities. Also, walled gardens such as Meta and Google, they have extremely severe content moderators. That is why we have very few possibilities to speak about the war with the good pictures, with realistic pictures of the war, because there are a lot of Google and Meta policies that just bans our creatives. So we use a lot of possibilities of our edtech platform. So we use all possible Russian traffic and Belarusian traffic just to communicate.
And without giving too much away, in marketing terms, how do those campaigns work? What sort of devices, platforms do you use to get those adverts through the firewall?
First of all, in February, we tried to use heavily the main advertising tools, Google, YouTube, and Facebook. But it was not so long, and someday in March, this possibility was closed, and now Russian people could use Instagram, Facebook, and Google using a VPN with no direct availability. Also, a lot of our members, which are edtech platforms with different formats like push-up, like video, they just propose to use all their Russian traffic to deliver the communication. And as for moderation, it was our guys. That is why we could use any possible creative materials with all realistic war pictures and so on to deliver it. And also we try when it was possible to offer our audience in Russia and Belarus to go to the dedicated YouTube video and to get more information. Or we use push advertisement, and we use any possible way to get the message. And as far as we could estimate, in March, our activity was very massive. And for example, Roskomnadzor, it's a Russian state agency that controls everything about web. And they noticed our activity. For me, as a media specialist, it means that we definitely built reach in media terms at least 50% at least. But when we saw our analytics, we could, it's not single source because we do it not in typical normal way. We have a lot of teams and a lot of people connected, but we could kind of multi-source analytics. I could estimate that we built no less than 17% of Russian internet users reach. It means that at least 70% of all users of internet in Russia saw our messages at least one time. Definitely some of them saw it 12 or 15 times, it's okay. And Roskomnadzor, they launch special format like briefings, and it's available online on YouTube. They appeal to Meta and to Google, asking them to close our activity because they mention it as dangerous for Russia. It means that our media power of this communication was great, was noticeable, and Russian state agencies understand it and estimate it as a danger for the typical propaganda way of communicating to Russian people, because it was against typical things propaganda spoke at that time.
And 17% of internet users is very high, but of course that's spread over rural areas and cities. So if you're looking at the large cities like St. Petersburg, Moscow, Ekaterinburg, you're actually reaching a much higher percentage of the population, I imagine, in large cities.
Yes, I hope so, because Russia is not equally covered with internet availability, and big cities definitely should be covered with a heavier level. But for me, it was very difficult to understand how it works when we have strong state propaganda and we have some communications actually strong in terms of media, and some people they have this propaganda for 10, 15 years, and they could look to the picture, to the video of bombing, and they told, oh, it's fake. You make fakes. As Ukraine constantly make fakes as a state. It's a state order to make video fakes, to make fakes, for example, maternal hospital in Mariupol bombarding, Kharkiv destroyed with Russian rockets and heavy artillery. And for me, it was almost impossible to understand, could the state propaganda do such ugly things with people's brain, with their possibility to think, with their critical thinking. And it is, for me, still ununderstandable how it could be.
Mm. And of course, if you watch Russian state TV, and unfortunately I've watched quite a lot of it, you realize that their state media is absolutely flooded with lies, conspiracy theories, and they create a lot of fake footage themselves. You know, there's a lot of fake footage filmed in the Donbass of supposedly Ukrainian attacks. And when you examine the footage that's been created by Russian propagandists, it's usually very, very bad. You know, when you get used to seeing the real footage and compare the fakes, the differences are absolutely obvious. But it does seem that the Russian population is swimming in a sea of lies, and maybe they just decided that everything is fake, and shutting themselves off, perhaps. So for you, for the campaign, what is the outcome that you want to achieve? Obviously, when you launched it in March, we're in a very different situation now. Back then, it looked like Kiev might fall. And of course, the resistance to Russian aggression was incredible, and Ukraine stood. You're now pushing them back in the north, and there's even the possibility of Kherson being taken back. So there's a very different scenario now. Does that mean that the outcomes from your campaign, your ideal outcomes from the campaign, are different now than they were in March?
I couldn't name our campaigns for informational resistance as constant or stable, because almost every 3 or 2 days there were changes of our available tools, of real situation, of creative. So sometimes we change creatives every day to deliver actual message. And for example, in March, we have absolutely difficult situation because Russian troops were in Kiev region, and there were different messages from us to Russia, Belarus, and also we communicated to Europe and to US. In April, for example, we have communication to United States for the closed sky and for weapons, and every time, every 3 days, something was changed. For example, we have a very secret way to get campaign in Kontakte, which is a Russian-owned social network. And our specialists, they use a very specific scheme in order to be also in Kontakte, which is a kind of diversion, for example, because it's Russian state controls social networks. But in April, we have a dramatic change of situation on front, because Kiev region and Chernihiv region were free of Russian troops, but the main focus of military activity moved to south and south and east. That is why we discover the level of damages Kiev and Chernihiv and sometimes Kharkiv and Sumy region received from Russian troops. That is why in May we also started another vector of our communication, and we launched support of our charity foundation, Ukrainian Charity Foundation, in order to support humanitarian needs, because a lot of people not only lost their homes, they lost a lot of elementary things like brushes, toothpaste, some very reasonable amount of clothes or something like that. That is why we launched another activity for our media specialists. We tried to help Ukrainian foundation to raise donations for this category of people. Also, we make appeal to our networks, and for example, IPG and Havas, they propose to Ukrainian branch, Razom Communication, a kind of grant to launch this campaign. It was, for me, a great sum. It's $150,000 to support humanitarian needs. And also our members, such as Dance, the Publicist Group, they also appeal to their head offices in order to receive this support to launch a dedicated advertising activity to support Ukrainian Charity Foundation. Not all, so we make a kind of short list, we check them. We understand what projects and what exactly needs they plan to cover with donations, and we will support them with advertising. So we once more we use our core expertise as digital experts and specialists to help. I could say it also to help win this war, but not on the battlefield, but on the field of humanitarian needs, support, and also a kind of also informational resistance, because we still keep it, but definitely in much lower level now.
That's interesting, and there's got two follow-up questions to things you mentioned there. One is about sort of crowdsourcing the funds for the campaigns, because obviously we know that potentially you've got digital experts who can volunteer their time to deliver the campaigns, but campaigns cost money because you have to pay the advertising platforms to run the campaigns. And if you're doing something like programmatic advertising, I don't know if you can confirm whether you are or not, that can get very expensive very quickly. In fact, you have to have fairly large investments for some of these automated bidding platforms to actually work effectively. So could you describe to me how you are managing to raise the funds to power the campaign? And are you using crowdsourcing methods to do so?
First of all, we ask for funds, for money from our members of IAB Ukraine, and very quickly in 2 days we have a sum enough to start the campaign. So at the end of February we have a kind of donation from our members to start. Also, we made appeal to advertisers in Ukraine, and also they propose some money for this activity. Sometimes we have a kind of private donation. For example, the guys who discover the scheme how to advertise on Vkontakte, they just called me, say, okay, I understand how to do it, we tested, it's okay, I need money. Okay, how much? So he asked me for the exact sum, and I just make a few calls, maybe 12 or 15, and I found 2 people private who, okay, I give money, just give me card. Okay, so it was like that, like very handful negotiation, because it's like, okay, I'll try, I call, sometimes it's cold phone calls, but definitely it has return in a form of donation. Also, there are some foreign groups of activists, for example, in Britain, in Israel, who supported us almost with the same communication. And they also use some fundraising platforms to raise the money. In Ukraine, we did not use this platform. We just did all this financing activity and fundraising using our personal contacts. When someone from our team understands how they could communicate and present what they need, I try to find the money for them. So it was like that. I think if we have had an idea to use fundraising platform, maybe it would be better for us. But actually, I had not such an idea. I just, okay, you need money. Okay, I call to and find this money, or not find. Not. I could not say yes to every request, but I definitely try to find. So it works like that.
And also you can guarantee the source of the money. You know who it's come from, you know the individuals, yes. which is obviously yes. very important in this.
Yes, and also I heard, for example, a kind of legend for me that some Russian companies gave the money for our informational resistance, but I couldn't name them because they gave money to our members, and our members spent their money for the activity. But there were some Russian companies from digital advertising that spent money for Ukrainian informational resistance.
That's very interesting, and obviously one wouldn't want to expose them because that would be very dangerous for their existence. But that's a fascinating story. And campaigns, I mean, for those watching this video who don't know how these campaigns normally work, normally you have a landing page or a link that you will send users to. In this case, you send them to videos, information, etc. Is that information political in any way, or is it factual? So, for instance, you know, the Navalny team have a whole series of very effective TV channels now, opposition TV. You have a lot of Ukrainian and Russian journalists collaborating, like Arestovich and others. So very effective but political channels. Do you send people to those, or do you send them to independent news sources?
We use a lot of sources. First of all, we tried to make our messages overcrammed with statistics, because statistics looks like seriously, looks like something important. That is why great share of our communications consists of figures, number of losses, number of lost planes, forecasted ruble to dollar exchange rate, something like that. But also we have an emotional appeal, because when we are speaking about Russian Soldiers' Mothers Committee, emotional appeals work better. That is why sometimes we gave to the audience emotional appeals. Also, when we were speaking about a closed sky over Ukraine, we also use emotional messages. But sometimes we could use in videos a kind of experts or bloggers or military experts or quasi-military experts, because people prefer to hear to real people. And for example, sometimes to hear Arestovich is more suitable, more understandable for them than to find Minister of Defense, for example, or even President. But first of all, we tried to communicate figures and statistics. And as we understand from analytics, creative materials with statistics and extremely with economical consequences of sanctions, they had a higher number of clicks because it was very understandable. Maybe typical Russian Russian man or woman, they are like 70 years old, they have no son in army, but price for sugar is very important for them. Exchange rate important for them. It could give them a kind of personal understanding of sanctions. And as we saw of statistics, such creatives has had higher clickability. So they click, and they were interested.
I think that's very important. I mean, having traveled around Russia, what always struck me is how people are obsessed with statistics. You know, when you're being shown somewhere by a tour guide, they often won't tell you any sort of emotional link to the place. They'll just give you lots and lots and lots of statistics and numbers, which to an extent become meaningless, but I can see how that would work very well. The other point I think is very interesting, and that is about food prices, because it also said that the Russians only have a revolution when there's nothing left in the fridge to eat. And you have to get right down to the absolute basics of living before the Russians will actually take any action to hold their leaders to account. So is that why you've tapped into those really sort of basic messages?
Definitely. Ukraine is also one of the main global contractor for the grain supply, for sunflower oil supply, for sugar, and we lost about 30% of fields this year because of the war. It means that even we have a good harvest, the world will suffer of food shortage. Not only such distant countries in Africa or Asia, but also Russian people. They also imported Ukrainian grain, Ukrainian sunflower oil, sugar, and so on. And these products, it's basic basket for in Ukraine and in Russia also. It means that in these terms, the consequences of war, of military activities, this lost 30% of our fields this year will be very sensitive, not only in Ukraine, but also in Russia, in Europe, and globally. Sometimes some experts forecasted that it could cause starvation, for example, in Africa, because they imported Ukrainian food.
Of course, yeah, and that crisis is still playing out. We don't know exactly what the impact is going to be, but certainly prices are rising across Europe, and it's clear that Russia has weaponized food as well as energy to try and bring itself victory, although I don't think that will help. Now, your campaign has gained a lot of attention, both within Ukraine, but also it has been featured in the West, in publications like The Guardian and in Germany's network DW. How important is it for you to get coverage of your activities within the Western media?
For me, it is extremely important because we are living in hybrid world, and the war is also hybrid. Now, in order to win the war, we need not only weapons, tanks, heavy artillery, and soldiers. We also need digital tools. And as for me, we tested a good set of digital tools, which is a kind of European case study. What should do digital professionals in case of war? Because now war is not only weapon. It's not only direct military activity, it's also informational resistance. And informational resistance now it's not like a papers with appeals like we have during the World War II. Informational resistance now is completely digitalized. So we should understand how to work with ads, with mobile phones, with messengers, in order to deliver all this information. For example, in Chernihiv and Kharkiv region, Russians didn't understand that they should block mobile connection, and they had this experience. And for example, in Kherson, first of all, they blocked Ukrainian mobile operators, and they control internet because they understand the power of digital communication as informational resistance. That is why, for me, it is impossible to deliver this message to Europe, to United States, and fortunately, I have a good opportunity to speak to IAB Global Board, to Germany IAB Board, and to Assembly of European branches of IABs. And it is very important to look, to estimate and use all these digital tools also as a good tool to win the war. It's the main message from me and from Ukraine, because now we are in a case study which we have first in Europe in a 50 or 60 years. So it's the main message from me to Western countries, just to understand it, to know it, and to be ready. Because in hybrid world there is no borders. In digital world, there is no borders at all. So we are modern countries are connected in thousands of ecosystems. They're connected deeply, and it means that the war between Russia and Ukraine couldn't be constant war between Russia and Ukraine. It became war between Russia and Europe, Russia and NATO, Russia and all the world. That is why Western countries should be ready. They should understand what tools are good on the field, and what any digital specialist, even digital specialists are smart guys. They are not ready to wear weapons or to kill people, but they could use their brains and their digital expertise and became a kind of digital warrior, a kind of digital soldier.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with that. And what I find fascinating about what's happening is there are a few organizations in the West who are trying to counter digital propaganda, but not that many, and most of them are private initiatives. They're mostly not governmental initiatives at all. And yet we see in Ukraine a huge number of organizations being created, different kinds of campaigns. It's almost like a sort of Cambrian explosion of digital experiments to counter the huge Russian offensive. So how would you say your effort fits into this digital warrior ecosystem which is developing?
Oh, very interesting question. Question about what is important. Everyone should understand that Russian state budget propaganda tools in state budget. So it's like a state area of responsibility to have propaganda. In Ukraine, we have a very different situation. We have a lot of independent media, despite that some media, some TV channels are owned by very rich people, but there are a lot of channels, and each of them has own voice, own interest, and I could say that situation with independent media is absolutely different comparing to Russian, for example. But in case of emergency, in case of war, we have not budget to speak in one voice of some state message. It's a problem, but we have a lot of volunteers and a lot of organizations that had desire, they had some money, or they have some resources to create a kind of alternative, not organization, but agency. I could name it a kind of countryside agency that could do creative, strategic production and media work in order to deliver message. The main problem now is that we have not one person that represents state or president office, or for example, Minister of Defense, that just could bring us and give us message. And we, as advertising industry, making all these banners, videos, started campaign. And what was the problem, and still is the problem? We should create the message by ourselves. Actually, it's not extremely good situation, but we have a plan as industry association that we will lobby this position, for example, in president office, someone like, maybe it's like press secretary, maybe communication director or communication head, a person in president office who will brief us and give us message, because all other roles and all other tasks we could close like association of industry players. So we could do strategic work, creative work, production, media, analytics, everything, but we just need the main message. I don't have explanation why it works in Ukraine. In any emergency case, in any trouble, in any problem, our nation produced a great share of volunteers ready to self-organization, which is great value, which is ready to find fundraising, to making banners, making videos, and maybe it's our kind of national specific or national character, but with Ukrainians definitely very good self-organized, extremely in under difficult circumstances. But I want to have more support and maybe more guidance from state offices. It will be very helpful for us, for example, to get even message, main key message, and everything other will be done by our team.
And I think that sounds very sensible. And of course, in the West, it works a little bit more like that, in that government does have more control over who gets to see what, and especially in the situation of war, they get to control a lot of the message that gets put out. But I think what I see from these self-organizing groups in Ukraine, it does seem that digital media, and especially social media, is all about experimenting. So in some respects, governments are very, very bad at experimenting, aren't they? At thinking of new ideas, testing and moving in an agile fashion. That is not what any governments do, in fact. So it does seem to me that these digital collectors that you've got perfectly fit the digital media war in a way, of course, the Russians cannot, because the Russian state acts as a vertical. Unless it's approved from the top, nothing gets said or done down through the power structure or the media. So to some extent, I think what you guys are doing fits much better with the media, the medium of social media, and certainly is far more powerful than anything that the Russians can do.
Yes, but definitely our informational resistance structure is not vertical. It's almost horizontal because it's just connections and connections of a lot of volunteers. And this structure also has pros and cons. And sometimes we need to combine the best from a vertical structure and horizontal structure, because every army is a vertical structure, and horizontal structure is like partisans. During the war, we need both regular army and also we need diversions and partisans. Only these combinations could bring us good results. That is why I, as head of industrial associations, I have plans to bring some elements of a vertical structure. And also we have some discussions with our members that we should create a kind of emergency structure to define all the roles, to define all the brief formats, to define responsibility zones, and in any case of war, ecological disaster, something unpredictable, we just use this structure. And working using it, it doesn't deny that we will also connect and use all volunteers, but definitely we should add some elements of a vertical structure in order to, first of all, avoid resource overspending, because in any horizontal structure, and I feel it by my own experience in February and March, we have a resource overspent, because sometimes some people do the same work because it's volunteers, because it's bombing, because sometimes it's low internet connection. And we as digital experts, we should use this experience and skill learning from the February, March, April, in order to be ready for any emergency situation. Our industry wasn't prepared for the war. I could say it. We were not ready, and definitely we should have a map of scenarios. We should have algorithm of what we should do, and all this should be done beforehand. So, like, we should have action plans and for different scenarios. And in case of not in case, but when the war will end, we spent some time for this preparation, for this emergency structure preparation. Something that could offer, we could offer this to our industry, and our industry will be, first of all, prepared, and all of our specialists will understand their place, their role, their responsibility zone, and structure where they should use their expertise and their skills.
And talking of being prepared, you've talked about the fact that even if the West doesn't consider itself in conflict with Russia, Russia does consider that it is in conflict with US and the West. So you've got this sort of disbalance in perception there, with the West being far more short-term and Russia potentially being far more strategic in its long-term, let's say, imperialist ambitions. So what should the West be doing to learn from all these partisan horizontal experiments that are going on in Ukraine? How can the West take those learnings and actually build digital into part of its hybrid war strategy for the future?
Difficult now to make conclusions because we are still in process. We are now in process of having this experience. But in a simple word, I could say that we, as digital and communication experts, we should analyze the war situation in terms of typical communication brief. So our enemy, it's our target audience. Every target audience has, for example, size, they have age pattern, they have some behavior patterns, and as we as marketers, as digital marketers, used to study target audience, also we should study our enemy as target audience, because when we understand Russian and Belarusians as target audience, we understand how they consume media, how they consume digital. And when we have this understanding, it means for us that we could use the best way to communicate with them. It means for me that key knowledge, key learning of this war, it is to understand your target audience as much as possible. And in communicating, we should use all these formats, tools, as we used to communicate to advertisers. But definitely creative materials will be different. And in this point, we need strategies to understand what exactly which should be communicated to what target audience, or maybe to exactly what part of target audience. So it's very, very similar as, for example, we planned advertising activity for FMCG. We just started target audience, divided to sub-target audiences, making a great selection of tools. So all these things, which seems too much from marketing, should be done in hybrid war. Definitely with the help of digital marketers, digital experts who became digital veteran now.
And I think this might point to at least how Ukraine is going to win the hybrid war. And that is that you understand your target audience far, far better. You know the demographics and a lot of the intent that exists in Russians' minds. Obviously, there's diversity there, but you have a really good idea of your enemy in that respect. Whereas the Russians don't seem to really understand either Ukrainians or the diversity that exists in the society. They don't seem to understand Ukrainian institutions or even geography. And do you think that will help in your victory?
Yeah. They, fortunately for us, they used maps of 1960s. They do not use even Google Maps, for example, which is so strange for me. And which was very, very fun when they tried to destroy TV translators. Every time in every city they tried to destroy the TV
transmitters,
translator powers. But Ukraine is highly digitalized country with good coverage of even mobile internet, and we almost find our news in mobile phones, not in the on TV. And for me, as a communication expert, it's a great mistake in media consumption. So we, as Ukrainian, is target audience for Russians, and they did not learn our media consumption, which has a great share of internet consumption and our mobile internet consumption, and the way we consume news because it's very important for propaganda. They just destroyed TV transmitters. It's
no effect at all.
No effect at all, but it's a good example of importance of understanding target audience. Despite it sounds like, oh, it's much about marketing. Yes, but we should understand.
I think that's a perfect place to end our interview. And I think that is an extremely strong conclusion and learning from this experience that you've got in hybrid war strategies. Anastasiya, I'm very grateful to you for making the time to speak to me today. The work you're doing is extraordinary, innovative, and bold. And I wish you luck in your ongoing campaign. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you.